Welcome back to Buckets WNBA edition. I am your host, Jim Turvey. It is Family Friday, and we've got a returning family member coming in, Sean Koerner. What the analytics, the odds maker? There's an analytics name too as well. I remember the odds maker. What analytics capper? What's it? No, that's Albert. What's the other nickname you've got, Sean?
Oh, it's for all I know, it's odds maker. Some people might call me something else, but
Okay.
I've only gone by Sean and the odds maker. So
Okay, fair enough. I think I was mixing things up there, but we have the odds maker. Everyone knows Sean. Sean's been here for a while. Sean does tons of sports, kills it across the vast variety of sports that he covers. Love having him on. We had him on maybe a month ago. Gave out a couple futures. They're both looking really good. We were just talking about that before the podcast. Gave out a Sun win total under. Gave out a Dream win total over. Both of those are tracking pretty well. And just love chatting WNBA with Sean in general. A longtime fan. So I wanted to ask you to start because I think you and I have been, I feel like our messages this year have been almost more like forlorn or like stressed because this WNBA season has been very difficult to bet. I think you and I both agree that we've had decent process. It is a sharper market in general. It's a more crowded market, but I think you and I would agree if we simmed this season 100 times, this is probably like a fifth percentile outcome of both of our ROIs this season. So even though it's been maybe a little bit rough betting, if you want to touch on that, feel free. Have you enjoyed the season? Have you enjoyed watching games? Have you got to any games out there in LA? Overall, what's your takeaway on the season so far?
yeah, so I would agree with that. This year's been a bit tougher results wise. I feel like my process has never been better. It's just like I'm a game ahead or a game behind on certain trends or regression.
Yeah.
Most famously, the first game of the season, I actually was on the Valkyries plus 7.5 against my hometown Sparks. Because I thought, on paper, this is a solid expansion team. And obviously, WNBA expansion teams have done really poorly in the past, but I thought this one would be, at least decent. So I took them plus 7.5 opening night against, in front of 20,000 people, and they got blown out. But had they played that game any other time, like the Valkyries would be favored at this point. They're incredible this year.
7.5. Like it would be
yeah,
almost
exactly.
that far.
Yeah, at home against the Sparks, like they'd be laying, a handful of points for sure. So that's kind of my point. It's like the reads have been there, just haven't been the right timing. It is what it is. I also feel like I haven't been around as much, haven't been able to have as much volume to kind of overcome some of these slumps. But again, I feel like the process is still there. But as you alluded to, the market's extremely sharp these days, especially with props. But I still enjoy WNBA, even if, I'm not tearing it up. And I've yet to be to a Sparks game. I'm hoping I could change that in the next week or so. But yeah, always love going to a handful of Sparks game every year.
Actually, it's funny. I had a friend at a Sparks team today. They had one of those camp games, and he did not realize it was a camp game until he showed up. It's like, why are there like 1,000 kids here just screaming their heads off? I love those camp games. They'll put your iPad speakers to the test because you definitely just get screaming kids for like 2 hours. But they're always a pretty fun hang. So. I mean, to echo your thoughts, I mean, I have a lot of the same thoughts here. And I really like that you highlighted how tough the props have been. I have almost found sides and totals to maybe be, especially on open, like a little bit softer than props, which doesn't really make sense. But if it means that people are out there like really hawking props and paying attention to the WNBA, I love it. Even if it makes it a little more challenging, it just makes it, so you got to, think creatively. And, I've got a couple of best bets today that I hope kind of lean into that. I know you do as well. So why don't we just get right into it? It's a 2-game Friday slate, a little bit smaller. We've had a couple of these lately where they're kind of spreading the games out for the week. We kind of purposefully put these Buckets WNBA episodes to come out on Tuesdays and Fridays because those are usually busier slates, but it's been a little quiet lately. But that's all right. We actually have a lot of bets considering this is only a 2-game slate. So the 2 games on the slate for Friday are the Atlanta Dream at the Indiana Fever. We've got the Fever minus 1.5 and a total of 168.5 in that game. Then we got the Connecticut Sun, which Sean is, if you're watching on YouTube, Sean's rocking the hat after they beat the Seattle Storm last time. They now go to Seattle. Seattle's laying 18.5 in this rematch here. The total's 157.5. Both that number and that total have moved a fair amount. We've actually seen a little bit of movement in the total for the other game as well. So, Sean, we'll dig into these 2 games, but why don't you rattle off all your best bets first? I'll rattle off mine, and then we'll kind of go game by game, breaking them down.
Sure, yeah. So for this first game between Fever and Dream, I'm going with Aaliyah Boston to score 15 plus points at minus 128. And on the other side, I'm going with Ryan Howard under 4.5 rebounds at minus 120. Those correlate perfectly, so you could parlay those two as well if you want. And then for the other game, I love Aneesah Morrow 6 plus rebounds at minus 132. Also, like, laddering this, so 8 plus rebounds is plus 240. Last time I looked, 10 plus rebounds was plus 580. So I love investing in all three of those overs here. We'll talk about why I like her upside here in a bit. And then the total for that game, I do like the under. Right now it's at 158.5. I think it could get bet up. I mean, they just played a few days ago and they scored 1,000,000 points. So I wouldn't be shocked if the market moves this up over 160. So I'm going to hang off on this one and see if it gets up over 160 or where it might peak, and then come in on the under for the Sun Storm rematch under.
Love that. My best bets, I've got for the Atlanta and Indiana game. I got two kind of unique ways to bet this. Both are a little bit longer odds. This is one thing I'm trying here with. We talked about how funky things are. I'll talk in my cap about coaches' rotations being a little bit tricky to predict. So I'm kind of leaning into trying to get a little bit longer odds and trying to leverage that chaos against the books a little bit. I've got Natasha Howard and the same game parlay here to score 15 points and get 6 rebounds. You can get that plus 474. And then I'm going to take the Atlanta Dream minus 7.5 at plus 350. Those are my bets for the first game. And then for the second game, going Tina Charles under 13.5 points. That's like a half unit bet from me. A little bit less than those others. Those others are long odds, so you probably unit wise be semi comparable there. So Sean, let's get into this first game here, Atlanta at Indiana. Why don't we start with the Indiana side of it? Aaliyah Boston, 15 plus points. This is a bet I've been placing a lot lately. Her points have kind of been up and down with Caitlin in and out of the lineup. I'm guessing that's probably part of the cap, but you want to talk through why you like Boston on Friday?
Yeah, so this is just a good matchup for Boston specifically, and Natasha Howard, just because the Dream are a 2-point funnel defense. They do a really good job limiting 3-pointers. They've allowed the fewest 3-pointer made per game this year, but they also allow the second most 2-point makes per game. And, Boston basically lives off 2-point shots inside. So this just sets up as a perfect matchup to let her cook. And the last time I took the over on her was this matchup. Obviously, she ended up having like a season worst shooting game, scored 7 points. But, ever since then, there's been a handful of games in a row where she looks like the best player in the league at times. And one of the things I might have overlooked was Caitlin Clark was out last game, against the Dream. And I thought, her usage rate would go up. That would make sense. But Boston's scoring rate actually goes up with Clark in the lineup. And it makes a ton of sense because Clark, helps open things up inside. Plus, she's able and, willing to lob it inside. Sometimes the risky passes, they can get tipped and turned over. But she's willing to make those passes to Boston. So when Caitlin Clark is active, that's when Boston actually scores more. So that's why this time around, I think it's going to actually be a winner. And she won't have, season worst type game. I think Clark unlocks Boston's scoring upside. So I'm projecting her closer to 16 points here. And love her upside to, score 15 plus at minus 128.
Yeah, I love this. I am almost certainly going to join you on this, and I'll actually use it to transition into the Natasha Howard one, because you talked about part of the cap that I had as well is how much Atlanta brings teams into the paint to score on them. I also think it's a little bit of a tough matchup here for Atlanta. I'm really curious to see. Carl Smesco has really done a pretty good job of balancing the two big lineup and trying to not overplay it, but then if the matchup is right, play it. I think Natasha Howard's kind of a tough cover for either Briner or Jones. Atlanta's got that double big there with those two. Neither of them really the fleetest of foot. Both of them very good rim protectors. Natasha Howard can do a lot of damage, from either driving in from the perimeter or creating space for herself in the mid range. I think she's a really good matchup. The tricky thing with Howard here is that her minutes have been all over the place. She only played 16 minutes last game, but she's been playing really well of late. If you look at the on-off numbers, kind of wondering if at some point her minutes are going to stick. She is the best player by kind of net rating differential on this team. So I think that, Stephanie White has a chance to kind of force Carl Smesco's hand here and give Natasha Howard minutes that I think will make one of those bigs go off the court. Now, ironically, Atlanta is better when they have one of the bigs off the court. So maybe it's one of these cyclical things where you can get a little too cute with it, which is why I'm kind of trying to target a little bit of a longer number here. So I'm going to try and play her points and her rebounds, obviously correlated. They know that, but we're kind of going up the ladder a little bit. This is basically a 50-50 hit rate when she plays at least 25 minutes this season. She's just had a bunch of games where she hasn't gotten to 25 minutes. She also has a bunch of games where she's gotten to 30. Her minutes have just kind of been all over the place. So I don't want to just take a baseline minus 110 and kind of risk the minutes. I want to get a little bit further up the ladder and say, hey, if she's playing, I think this is a good matchup for her, both in terms of, personnel, who she's going against on the Dream, but also potentially in terms of, schematically against Carl Smesco. He's going to be funneling folks in. So I wanted to kind of, jump the ladder a little bit there. I'll go to the Dream side here as well, because I'm kind of talking through this. Despite liking Boston points and Tosh points, I just think that this Dream team is better than this Fever team. The reason I'm going with the alt line, again, kind of leaning into the chaos of the season, trying to get a little bit of a longer number potentially, but also the Dream are a little dicey in close games. They're 2-5 in games decided by 5 or less this season. And you kind of see it when you're watching the games. Their offense definitely stalls out a little bit late. It's something that, I love the Dream. We talked about them last time you were on the podcast. I do think they're a very, very good regular season team. I'm a little bit nervous. I've come down on them. At one point I was thinking about them as potential semifinal contender, maybe even get to the finals. I've come down on them a little bit because I haven't loved what I've seen in kind of the crunch time offense. And a lot of times that's what's going to translate to the postseason when you're seeing that the most tight defensive, smart schematics of the end of the game. I haven't been super blown away. Now, part of this is they're still working folks back. Jordan Canada, Ryan Howard, Alicia Gray, their core lineup hasn't even played a ton of minutes together. So this is something that they can work throughout the season. Flip side of it, the Fever have obviously had a lot of that as well. They've had Caitlin missing a lot of games. They had Bonner in, and now Bonner's not with the team anymore. They're kind of working folks in and out. I think that's kind of why this Fever team is where they are right now. I think long term they'll be fine, but Caitlin's definitely in a really big funk right now. Part of it may have been injury related. She came back last game, didn't really look all that great. Saw a tweet today talking about how she got the worst shooting percentage from 3 over a 4-game stretch in WNBA history. She's clearly a great player, but right now she's working things out. The Fever are working things out. This spread, sorry. You can still find a 2.5 out there, plus 2.5 for the Dream. That's implying that these two teams are around even. Indiana has a pretty good home court, so maybe you'd say, this is implying the Dream are a tiny bit better. I think the Dream are a tier above the Fever right now with how each team is playing. And if I want to avoid the close game, I'm just going to take it out to -7.5. I chose that because FanDuel has the try market -7.5. I don't mind -5.5, -6.5. Shop it around, see what's available out there. But that's the side I'm going to want to be on for this game. Sean, feel free to give any thoughts on those, and then go to your final prop in this first game on the slate on Friday.
Yeah, I like the idea of kind of betting into the chaos of the WNBA, not just taking the plus 2.5, but an alt line like that. Because if you watch the Fever, their last game, that was one of their worst games of the season. They lost to the Valkyries by 20 points. I still think they're a good team, but it was just a bad game all around for the Fever. So if that sticks around, they just won the Commissioner's Cup, so I wasn't shocked to see them lose 2 of the next 3 games.
Yeah.
So they could just be kind of hungover from that, because it's such a big deal in the WNBA winning that thing, that kind of fading them after that makes a ton of sense. So I do like that, and I like the idea of taking the alt line of Atlanta -7.5. Hopefully our Fever player props can still hit. Gonna be threading the needle with all that, but that's why the odds are so high on that. But yeah, I'm also on the other prop in that game that I'm on is the Ryan Howard under 4.5 rebounds at -120. And there's actually a few reasons why I'm showing value on the under for this matchup. Is because it's just a tougher matchup to get boards. The Fever have allowed the second fewest rebounds per game. Part of that is they're just an excellent shooting team. They have the second best field goal percentage in the league. And, Ryan Howard typically gets her rebounds on the defensive side. So if there's not as many missed shots, that's going to hurt her upside. And I have the Dreamer projected to face about 4 fewer missed field goal attempts this game compared to the rest of the games this season. So there's a 4 rebound hit on the team total. But this is also a matchup that I just think that the Fever could take advantage of the Dream's 2-point funnel defense. So it's just going to be a lot more inside shooting, which Howard probably isn't going to be in on as much here, because I was watching the past couple times they met. Ryan Howard was guarding Caitlin Clark as soon as she got past half court. So if she's guarding Caitlin Clark, there's gonna be some times where she's defending, a 3-point attempt 28 feet from the rim, or just sticking with Caitlin Clark. So she might be involved in less 2-point miss shots than normal. Plus, she's 5th in steals per game, so I think she's gonna be trying to force Clark to turn the ball over a lot. So it'd make a ton of sense to have Howard on her as much as possible, and I think that's just going to pull her away from potential rebounds. So a lot of different reasons why I like the under here, but I'd project this closer to minus 150 or so.
I love it. Yeah, I was looking for a rebound under in this game as well, in part because of, like you said, these are 2 really good defensive rebounding teams. I love targeting someone like Ryan, who gets most of hers on defensive end, and I love the matchup stuff you threw in there for, Caitlin's not going to, she's going to be 28 feet away from the basket, like you said. So I really like that look. Let's flip it and let's talk about someone whose rebounds you are looking at. So we'll go to the second game here, Connecticut at Seattle. Aneesah Morrow, this was a ladder that I was on last game, hit the first rung.
Nice.
Unfortunately, she couldn't grab the 8th rebound. She was stuck on 7. I was tracking the game. I was working. I wasn't watching. I don't know if I think she was in the game, just stuck on 7 for like the final 8 minutes. I was like, come on, how do we not get at least one more rung? But she's been an awesome rebounder of late, getting more minutes of late. Talk to me about Aneesah Morrow here with the 6+ and then the ladder up to 10+.
Yeah, so love the 6+ at minus 132. She was the 7th overall pick that kind of had a slow start to her rookie season, and you kind of hinted on it. Her playing time has been shooting up lately. She's only played 20+ minutes in 4 games this year, but 3 of those 4 were the last 4 games that she's played. So her playing time's up, which makes sense. They need to get her as much playing time as possible in a rebuilding, lost season. And this is a matchup where, the Storm, they rely a ton on 2-point shooting. They rely on 2-point scoring at the highest rate in the league. So that means they're going to have, make a higher percentage of shots as a result. When they do miss, they're going to have a lot more 2-point misses. The Sun typically see, and that's really where Morrow gets a lot of her rebounds. She has a 25% rebound rate on 2-point misses, which is one of the highest in the league. I think it's 8th highest rate in the league. So those are the shots that she's going to see more of here. And I was watching her closely last game. I don't remember if she was stuck on 7 or got one late, but when you watch her, she is trying to get rebounds.
Oh yeah,
right. Whenever you bet a rebound over, it's so infuriating when they just kind of defer, let people take it. She's literally in there trying to snatch it from her teammates.
Oh, yeah.
She is trying to get as many rebounds as humanly possible. So it's always fun to be on her overs because of that. But she's also getting a ton of offensive boards on missed threes. She has the 3rd highest offensive rebound rate on missed threes. And what happened last game was the Sun had one of their best shooting games of the season. They shot 44% from beyond the arc. So I'm expecting some regression there, some more missed threes on offense, which are actually some rebounds that she gets involved in more times than not. So I think she has a lot of upside here if the Sun also cool off here shooting. So yeah, I love the over 6+. But I love her floor ceiling combo here as well. That's why I'm going with the ladder, because this will probably be a blowout. Last time they upset the Storm, but the line is up to 18 now. Sports books are not stupid. I would not be shocked if the Storm take them more seriously now, win by 20+. So she could get more playing time in that situation. She's kind of blowout proof. And if you think about it, both scenarios, she has a ton of upside because, again, if the Storm, blow out the Sun, she's going to get more playing time, especially later on with the second unit, bricking more shots. But if the Sun keep it close, it's likely due to the Storm, having a poor shooting night and more potential rebounds anyway. So kind of both ways this game could go, both set up nicely for Morrow anyway. So I love her floor ceiling combo. That's why I'm hitting all three different rebound overs for her in this game.
Yeah, I love it. And you mentioned her being blowout proof. She almost is like blowout, like that's a benefit because her highest minute total this season was the game they lost by 39. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. I'll run this back as well. Do you want to talk about the under as well? Actually, let me talk about Tina because Tina actually parlays kind of perfectly with Aneesah Morrow here. So Tia Charles is the player who Aneesah Morrow was taking minutes from for a little bit there. Now, last game, they interestingly played a fair amount together, which I thought was pretty notable. But Tia Charles is another, like kind of the inverse of Natasha Howard or similar in that her minutes have been vacillating all over the place. But here I'm looking to go on a zag under. So her minutes really have been trending down in general. In fact, she came off the bench, I believe it was 2 games ago for the first time. And then last game was reinserted in the starting lineup and went bananas. Had one of her best games of the season. I believe 29 points, a lot of rebounds, which she hasn't been doing all season. I'm going to look to zag off of that. I'll be honest. I was hoping this number was going to be a little bit higher, which is why it's more of like a half unit play here where it's 13.5. Look like the books maybe sniff this out a little bit here. But over the past couple seasons, the games where she has gone for 20 plus points, her points per game in the games directly after are about 2 points lower than her season average in that time. In fact, a little bit over 2 points. Kind of makes sense. She's one of the older players in the league. Those are heavy usage, high minute games. And then in this case, we also have a direct rematch. She's going to be getting the eyeballs. She just torched the Storm. They did not want to lose that game. Skylar and that Storm team did not want to lose that game. Now this is one of the best front court defenses in the league. It's kind of amazing she had such a good game, a turn back the clock Tina Charles game. She is amazing. She's an outstanding scorer. But I think that there is a very good chance, like you said, that we do get the blowout that, I was kind of counting for last game and didn't get. Now, if we get it here, that's going to mean fewer minutes for her. She is not blowout proof. If it's a blowout, she definitely will not get a high minute total. And the multiple times this season, she has scored 20 plus and then played less than 20 minutes the next game. So it's not like the coach there, who I do struggle to pronounce the name, so apologies. I'm just say the coach here. It says like if you score 20 plus, the next game you're getting minutes. No, sometimes it's been 20 plus, and the next game we get blown out and you play 14 minutes. She had a 2-point game in there. And with the Seattle defense in general, I'm going to be on this under. You're on the game under as a whole. So these, we'll talk about our little game script in a second. These all kind of play together pretty well.
Yeah. So I like the under at 158.5 right now. I'm not projecting it too much lower than that, but I just think this is going to get bet up. So I'm anticipating, hopefully it gets up to, 160 and then come on the under. But it has to just do with last game. The Sun were just shooting out of their mind, kind of going with what you were saying with Tina Charles. It was a camp game, so you had a bunch of screaming kids. Brandon Glasheen was all excited. The Storm won at home, so they went all out. So I think we're going to see some heavy regression here. Again, they shot 44% from 3 and 96% from the line. They actually shot 22 free throws in that game, and the worst shooting team in the league. So I think regression is going to hit here hard. And then if the Storm do blow them out, that'll help slow them down. They won't be pressing as much. And I think they're going to try to, again, take Tina Charles seriously, take the Sun offense more seriously, and have a much better game plan, considering these teams faced each other just 2 or 3 days ago. So this is a game I think the public could be kind of overreacting to. I think it was 176 total points in that game. But if you look at the pace, the pace of that game was 79, which is right in line with my projection for the pace of this matchup. So I think we're going to see some regression here. I'm projecting this closer to 157. But again, I think this could get bet up to like 160, and I'm going to try to time it to take this under once I think the market's peaked on the over.
I love that. And let's transition into, we do Survivor on Mondays with Dano, or on Tuesdays with Dano. We do game script parlays with the guests on Friday. This one makes like too much sense. So if we just literally throw our 3 bets together, Tina Charles under 13.5 points, Aneesah Morrow over 5.5 rebounds, game total, which you said you're like waiting out, but even if we just grab it at 158 and a
Yeah.
half right now, that's at plus 356 at FanDuel right now. Like that alone is not bad. And then we were talking before, I think that you go to the 8+ rebounds from Morrow, because if the Tatina, the under that 13 and a half is going to mean minutes from Morrow. So if you throw the 8+ rebounds, now we're up to plus 740. I think this is a pretty fun little same game parlay here.
Yeah, no, there's so much correlation here, and I agree. I like the 8+ rebounds one at plus 740. Assuming the Storm blow them out. Tina, is struggling to shoot. She has her minutes cut at the expense of Morrow, who's getting all the rebounds. Plus, I think Tina had a really good rebounding game last game. That hasn't been a consistent thing this year. So I just love how this. Yeah, I love how this correlates, and just throwing it in, the alt over for Morrow, making it, plus 740. I love the correlation here. I love the price.
We also just have, it's incredibly simpatico. I was looking at my phone over here because I was realizing our other script is actually, I'm going to leave out the alt spread because it already is long enough. If we just do Aaliyah Boston 15+ points, Ryan Howard under 4.5 rebounds, Tosh 15 and 6. That's just combining all of our bets. Now we're at plus 1566. So that's almost 16-1. So we have to throw two same game parlays in the app here for the people, because both our plays were very simpatico today, which is either a good sign or a very bad sign based on the season as a whole.
I'm saying good. We're due for some positive regression.
I love it. All right, let's go into the second half of the show here. We always love to do, cover the slate and then try and come up with like a fun little topic for the second half of the podcast. And what I asked Sean to come with today was the 5 players in the WNBA who are the most valuable to the spread. So when we think about projecting out spreads, we had a case today where A'ja Wilson was questionable for the game, Aces and Mystics. Throughout betting history, certain players have been worth certain points. Sean, if you have even more context this on the W side, kind of historically, what you've kind of seen. But, the best players are, 4-5 points typically, and then there's context, right? There's certain players in certain environments where if there's no depth behind them, if they're, if they truly carry their team, you might even be able to like squeak out a 5.5, something like that. But then on the flip side, there can be, players who are thought of as great, but they're on a really good team, might only move, 2 points, something like that. So what I wanted to do here was talk through the players that Sean and I found to be the most valuable to the spread in the WNBA today. I'm going to come back later in the season. I think it's fun. It'll be fun too to do one where it's like players who you might not think of it, but are actually worth a fair amount. I think that's a fun one as well. But these are going to be some big names. You and I have the same top 3, not in the exact same order, but we have the same top 3, but we don't have the exact same top 5. So let's start at 5, and I'm going to start with you. This is a name I was looking at. I ended up, I think she would have been right in my honorable mentions. It's from a big name team, but it might not be the player that some folks are thinking of. So who is your number 5 in terms of most valuable players to spread in W right now, Sean?
Yeah, this one's a bit of a reach, but I'm going to go with Aaliyah Boston. Just because there's really a handful of, I'm sure you had this happen too. There's just a handful of players that you could put in the 5 to 10 range, in my opinion. And, one of the things I did, or what I do to kind of assess this, is I look at, the player efficiency ratings, WAR, offense, defensive rating when they're on and off the court. None of them are perfect. They all have their flaws, but I like to blend them together and kind of take some from all 3 and kind of use my intuition. Again, like you said, I've been betting WNBA a long time, so I kind of familiar with when these players are out, how much the market actually moves. And this year, so I create all this to make an impact score. And this year, Aaliyah Boston ranked 2nd, which is kind of surprising to me. But she's having a really strong season. And, it's her 3rd season. She's continuing to improve. She's still only 23 years old, so still entering her prime. And there's times where she looks like, the best player in the league, sort of in the Collier Asia tier, in my opinion. But she is inconsistent. I am going to preface with that. But like you said, Caitlin Clark has been worth 4 to 5 points when she's ruled out because she's the most popular player in the world. So when she's out, the market just has to react, and they need to lower the Fever, team total or spread by 4 or 5 points. It's, that's just the market dictating that. But I would say Clark's probably worth closer to 3 points or so at this point in her career. Certainly down the road, she might be worth more than 5 points. But Boston is sneaky good, and especially on this roster, because she helps open things up, for Clark and even Natasha Howard inside. So I think she's more valuable than people realize. Where if she's ruled out, I don't think she's been ruled out a game yet this year. I think she might only move the spread by 2, maybe 3 points. But I think the market kind of has it backwards, where Boston, might be actually worth 3 to 4 points. So again, this is a bit of a reach putting her here. I like your 5th maybe slightly better. But I think just due to the fact that she's trending up and she ranks 2nd in impact score this year, means I kind of want to be ahead on her being, extremely important to the Fever, and, becoming one of the best young players in the league right now.
No, I absolutely love this. I just find I like your 5th more. I was like, I kind of like Leah Boston in that spot, but in part because it does play off of like you said, I agree 100% that Caitlin, and this is not Caitlin Heat, it's just she's at a point in her career where, she's still this is 2nd year that Leah Boston's in 3rd, and it's easier to adjust as a big than as a guard. And Aaliyah Boston's great. She literally is 2nd in the league in win shares this season. So she's 2nd in your impact score, 2nd in win shares. She's playing outstanding basketball. If you look at the on-off stuff with Caitlin, I mean, this has been talked about how the team, the Fever struggle with Caitlin in the lineup, and we're about the same with her out. And if you look at the on-off numbers, it's similar. The team is a little bit better with her on, but it's not to nearly the gap that Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah Boston's an incredible two-way player. She can't create offense like Caitlin does, but she does not she's one of the best defenders in the league on the other end. So she really is an outstanding player, and one of those to kind of keep an eye on. My number 5 is a much different. It's a guard on a team that's, that's kind of similar to yours, Indiana, but it's Skylar Diggins. So to me, I was with you that there were four names that kind of had to be had. Now, ironically, our number 4s are very similar, but not the exact same player, but we'll get to that in a second. But there seemed like there was a big 4 and then a lot of potential spots for this 5th. So I settled on Skylar. One stat that I used a lot of the same stuff you talked about, but one that I really did kind of I found myself kind of going back to was the net rating differential. So that's just the net rating when the player's on the court, the net rating when the player's off. Now, there's a lot of noise to this, and I realize that, so I don't want to overly weigh it here. But I do think it's pretty telling that the Storm are plus 9.8 net rating team with her on, minus 25.8 with her off, as the biggest gap in the entire WNBA. Again, the Seattle Storm bench is one of the worst in the league, so there's a lot to that. But that's kind of the point. If Skylar Diggins is going to be out for a game, this Seattle team is going to look lost. Now, they've had Erica Wheeler and Gabby Williams both improve as playmakers this season, but not nearly to the level of driving an offense that Skylar is. So, when you add in the fact that she's incredibly energetic, she's her competitive level, like, just, you have to be competitive around Skylar. There's no ability to not be competitive around Skylar Diggins. So I think you combine all that together, and like you said, it's kind of fun to like use this 5th slot to kind of like make a point, or kind of it's good list making right. to highlight someone that maybe wouldn't be thought of. I think both of our number 5s I love how they did that. So yeah, Leah Boston, Skylar Diggins, and now our 4s are not technically the same, but they're very similar. So why don't you say yours, and then people will probably be able to guess mine.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brianna Stewart, where, we're dealing with a super team where the Liberty have 3 players, you could argue, are all top 5 caliber, and Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, and Brianna Stewart. So I'm going to go Stewie here, who's long been one of my favorite players. She is having just a bit of a down season. She's 9th in impact score this year for me. But last year she was 2nd in impact score, and certainly that's kind of where people view her. I think the market considers her, a top 5, potentially top 3 player more times than not. So, with her, if she's out of the lineup, it's going to be muted if both Sabrina and Jonquel are both healthy, because both players can step up in her absence. So it's kind of hard to say any of these players are really worth more than, 4 points or so. But just in a vacuum, these are 3 of the best players in the league. So I still think Brianna Stewart would command a 3 to 4 point line move if she's ruled out. Now, Jonquel Jones out right now. that'd be a cluster injury situation where
Yes.
that's really going to hurt them. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Sabrina, who can handle it. But again, that's they're a superpower team with those three players, and to a certain extent, Natasha Cloud. But I think that Breanna Stewart would still command, potentially a 4-point line move if she was ruled out.
Yeah, I love Stewie there. And again, this is I just went the other New York big. I went Jonquel Jones. It's funny because you'd almost think that I mean you're 100% right on like that kind of that big three for New York, and right to highlight Cloud is like kind of the fourth, but definitely still very solid. You think if the two bigs were there that it might be Sabrina that was the most important. But I do think there's something about these two bigs. I think Jonquel and Stewie are still at this point a little bit better players than Sabrina, and so. I mean, and here's the thing. This I just used this season metric of like I didn't want to deny what my eyes had seen too much because I mean we've seen Jonquel go out and the Liberty become pretty pedestrian. They're 8-1 with her, 5-5 without her. Again, there's noise to this net rating differential, but they're plus 29.4 with her on the court, plus 1.4 with her off. That's a monster, massive gap. And we've seen it throughout her time with New York. There was the stats. I think they only recently lost her first game that she had a double in. She just really, when she is engaged and locked in, there's a reason she was finals MVP. She really is very central to this New York team. She's kind of the special sauce that kind of makes it all go. So I don't think you can go wrong with, Stewie or Jonquel Jones here. And honestly, you could make a case for Sabrina being so important to kind of stretching out the defenses and the creative playmaking that she has as well. But I settled on Jonquel Jones. Now is where it gets a little bit more similar. We have the same top three. We did switch the order a little bit. I won't give too much away, but who is your number three here for impact on the spread?
Yeah, for me, it's Alyssa Thomas because she just, she does it all. I've always had LeBron James as sort of her NBA comp.
Yeah.
She really does it all. Maybe not as much of a scorer, but just she controls the offense and everything. She averages 9.5 assists a game, 15 plus points a game, 7.5 rebounds a game. So always, triple double threat. And she missed a handful of games earlier this year, and the market was treating her as being worth around 4 points, which is what I have. And that's elite. But the Mercury, they still have Satu Sabali, Clea Copper, even Sammy Whitcomb, who can step up. But it just goes to show if Alyssa Thomas is out, she's the engine of that team. So she's extremely good in a vacuum and extremely valuable to the team. I had a bet based on Satu Sabali and Clea Copper getting ruled out a few days ago. I got the Wings plus 10. Silly me for ever putting money on the Wings. But I was like, this line's going to drop to about 6, maybe 5.5 because, Sabali is good and, Copper is good, but both getting ruled out before the market can react. I got to take it. And of course, the Mercury still blew out the Wings because that's just the way it goes this year. But it's because Alyssa Thomas was still healthy and she just went off. And Sammy Whitcomb went off because Alyssa Thomas helped set everything up. So Alyssa Thomas, easily top 3 player. And again, she's been proven to be this year by the market to be worth about 4 points on the spread, which is, again, very elite.
Yeah, I have her second. So I'll just skip to her right now. I'll talk through why I have her second. To me, that this is a little bit of the team around her because so much of the season we have seen those other players for Phoenix be in and out that they're not really like set. Like Sabali did have, the beginning of the season, she was in and it was just kind of her while AT and Ka both worked their way back. But the Mercury are 11-3 with Alyssa Thomas, 2-3 without her. And I think that honestly is a pretty fair representation of how important she is. Yeah. You mentioned the impact to kind of driving the offense, which she's such a hub on offense. She's also an incredible defender. The LeBron James comp is like when LeBron's engaged, because she is that engaged on defense at all times. Now she can't shoot like LeBron. Exactly. Yeah, she's playoff LeBron on both ends. She can't shoot like LeBron, but it is funny because she had 29 in their most recent game, an awesome, really fun game. Hope folks are watching that. She's kind of snuck herself into the MVP race. We talked about it on Monday, and Dano was like, I'm intrigued at 25 plus 2,500. I don't think that number's there anymore. She had a career high 29 points, but kind of speaks to the scoring. She didn't do a ton of scoring. Our buddy Joe Dolero was like, this is really her career high 29 points, which is kind of amazing for Alyssa Thomas, but she's so consistent. It's like 16 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists every game. And she really does. She's cut down on her turnover. She's more efficient this year. Really just an outstanding player who, has long deserved. She almost won that MVP a couple years back, has long deserved the credit. I'll talk about my number 3, who is Aneesah Collier, which is surprising because she, for my money, is the best player in the WNBA. I think she has taken the crown this season. I think she is the official best player in the league. Here's the thing, though. The depth of talent in Minnesota, the coaching they have, and the organizational stability, if she's out, the line is going to move. It's almost one of those where I'm like, if he's out, I might actually look to bet the Lynx. Now, having said that, they are definitely better with her on the court. We talk about this net rating differential. It's plus 6.4. But if I compare her to Skylar, who's up at, 33, Alyssa Thomas is plus 15.4, John Cole Jones plus 20. She does not hang with the others in that context. Now, she's so good that I think you have to have her here, and like, there is noise to that. But they have really good they have good big depth. They've got Alana Smith, who could be like potentially defensive player of the year. And then offensively, you've got Jess Shepard, who's a really good rebounder and scorer. They've got Courtney Williams. They've got Kayla McBride. They've got so much depth. They've got so much coaching ability. She has missed games at times, and they haven't looked great. Beginning of the season, she did miss, and they didn't look awesome. But I think that they do have kind of the organizational stability that makes me put her 3rd on the list. But only because Alyssa Thomas is on a slightly worse team, and our consensus number 1 is on a much worse team. So this is no shot at Fee, who I believe is your 2nd ranked player here.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And, she's the minus 500 favorite to win MVP and arguably the best player in the league. She has the highest impact score in my model for this season. So, yeah, by default, she's the best player. But kind of what you're saying, the Lynx are so deep that if she's out, they have enough talent to kind of replace her to where she's not going to be worth 5 to 6 points. I think part of that is obviously Alana Smith, excellent, defender. She could step up if Collier's out, but Jessica Shepard, especially, who missed last season, so she wasn't there last season. Maybe you can make the case if Collier missed time last year, it was more impactful. But with her there, she can step up if Collier's out, and she's solid. Maybe one of the most underrated players in the league. Maybe. Yeah. So I agree with you. Like Collier, one of the best player, the best player in the league. But if she's out, you kind of want the market to over-adjust because that the Lynx will be fine. So it's kind of those things where that my point back when I was saying, I took the Wings plus 10. If, these key players, these top 5 players aren't on the injury report and they're just randomly ruled out of the blue and you can get ahead of the market, that's the time to kind of, bet on the line move that the line's going to move 4 to 5 points. But this is a case where, once the market has settled, they might over adjust for Collier being out and move it, 5 to 6 points. There were some games she missed, 4 to 5, I think 4 games this year.
Yep.
There were some games where, the line moved by 5 points and they still covered my original rating, my original spread for the game with Collier in. So it's kind of, a sharp thing to do is wait for the market to kind of over adjust to that, just because the Lynx are such a deep and well-coached team.
Yeah, 100%. And now let's go our consensus number 1, probably not surprising to folks. The player who probably coming into this season, certainly last season was the best player and is on a team that really has slipped this year. It's A'ja Wilson. I do think she has slipped to that 2nd spot in the league overall, the Fee. But here's the thing. The Aces, as crazy as this seems, it's real, folks. This Aces team is not that good, and certainly not in the tier of the Lynx, whose her closest competition is going to be Aneesah Collier. With A'ja off the court, they are minus 14.9 net rating team this year. That's like almost Connecticut Sun level. Now, granted, a lot of that is when Jackie and Chelsea are off. So again, these are noisy, but you can see it when you watch. They lost tonight to the Washington Mystics. This Aces team, which is struggling in general, without the 2nd best player in the league, it's really a struggle. So I think that this is the player who, if they are out, and right now, we might see her out again for their next game. We don't have an update. We heard it's not broken, but we don't know updates beyond that. We might get a couple of games here to see how much the market adjusts, especially if you're the type of person who is kind of tracking past games and kind of lines making off of past games. We might get to see another chance with this. So Asia was your number one as well, I assume, for a lot of the same reasons. But talk to me a little bit about Asia.
Yeah, so even though she's having a bit of a down year, she's fourth in my impact score this season. She was by far number one last year and just has consistently been one of the best players. So that consistency is key when it comes to, being worth 4 more points against the spread, and she's earned that. And kind of like you said, this team isn't very good, and they don't have Kelsey Plum anymore, which I think they're still adjusting to. So we saw tonight where I had the Aces favored by about 1.5 over the Mystics, but with Asia out, I have that Mystics minus 3.5. So that's about a 5-point line move. That's exactly what the market did. And, the Aces looked like they were still going to win. They were up by like 8 points with 3 minutes left, and they ended up losing by 2. So this is one of those games where if Asia was playing, I bet they hang on and win. So this is a game where it actually came into play in their win-loss record, in my opinion. But yeah, she is worth about 5 points in my model, and the market has been treating her that way. So yeah, she's definitely, top 3 player in the league. But I think in terms of her team, when she's ruled out, it's going to be the biggest drop in team rating for me as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you that they win this game if she's in there tonight. They had a scoreless stretch basically to end the game. And for people, if you're not as in the weeds, it might kind of seem surprising that, the best players in the league are only worth 4 points. It's 2 baskets or whatever. But this is something that over the history of betting, some of the best bettors have kind of, weighted this and kind of looked at a large sample. And it is around these numbers, which seem kind of small. So think of it. I think if you're a bettor who hasn't thought about this, you'd actually be surprised maybe how little lines move at times. But know that there is context to this and history to this, and these are kind of standardized numbers. Now, I think you can play off of that, and that's what we're kind of trying to do here is highlight players who are super important, but maybe even like Skylar might be considered a two points to spread player who's really worth 3.5 in the Seattle system. So I think that's really fun to kind of think through. We kind of did the big names today. Like I said, I want to circle back and do some of the kind of under the radar names as well. But Sean, that was super fun. Thanks for humoring me. And I loved our list, especially the number 5s. I thought were really good representation of kind of like the core 4 and then like a fun fifth player there.
Kind of like you said, making a point.
Exactly.
But you could have picked 5 to 10 different players to slot in number 5. I think it's wide open. But that's what makes it so fun is it's also a moving landscape where player values themselves are moving all the time as well.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Sean, any final thoughts on the Friday slate or the W season as a whole, or should we just hop out of here?
Nope, just hoping for some regression finally. So the Sun, please miss some 3-pointers tomorrow. Please. For our bets.
We need those rebounds going to Aneesah and not Tina.
So, and under, and Tina to go under, all of it.
Exactly. All right. Thanks so much for coming on, Sean. Always a blast chatting through the W with you. If you guys would like to tail any of the bets we talked about today, look in the quick slip link in the episode description. We also post our same game parlays on the Parlay Express account on the Action Network app. So if you're looking to follow that, go check that out as well. I believe we just had a milestone for that account in terms of followers. So definitely a lot of folks there getting in on the fun. Sean and I will be posting our plays in the app as well. So obviously download that if somehow you have not done that at this point. I basically live in there. I assume if you're listening, you do as well. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're listening on podcasts, rating or review is always appreciated. Thanks to David Payne on audio as always, Gifford Gould and the YouTube team. And for myself and Sean, let's get buckets.